Hey, I'm Sophia. Before we start, go grab a snack and get comfortable for a bit. These stories take their time, and they are told the way I'd tell a friend late at night. I really hope you enjoy them. This story has one update on it and my own opinion at the end. Comment and tell me if you agree. Let's begin. When my parents laughed at my dreams, I built a fortune and made sure they knew it. My dad's laugh came out as a sharp bark that bounced off the kitchen tiles, and my mum covered her mouth with her hand like she was trying to be polite about it, but her eyes were already crinkling. I was standing at the end of the table with a stack of printed documents in my hands, business registration forms, a rough budget, a timeline I'd spent 2 weeks perfecting. While the lentil soup cooled between us, and the overhead light made everything look a little too bright, my younger brother's phone was face up beside his plate, buzzing with messages he wasn't reading because he was watching me like this was a show. A branding studio, my dad repeated, wheezing like I'd said I wanted to become an astronaut. Layla, please. People pay you to pick fonts? He looked at my mum as if waiting for her to join in, and she did, softly at first, then louder, when my dad slapped the table and laughed again. The edge of the paper cut into my palm. I could feel my heartbeat in the back of my throat. It's not just fonts, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It's strategy and design. It's a hobby, my mum interrupted, still smiling, still warm, like she was saving me from embarrassing myself. A cute hobby. You can do it on weekends. You went to uni. You have a real job. Why would you throw that away? My dad leaned back in his chair, satisfied, like the conversation was already over. Because I don't want my life to be something I endure, I heard myself say, and the words sounded too big for the room. He snorted. You want your life to be Instagram. My brother laughed under his breath. My mum reached across the table and patted my wrist like I was 5 and had announced I wanted to live on candy. Eat, she said. Don't be dramatic. I remember the way my chair scraped when I pushed it back, the sound loud and ugly in a kitchen that usually swallowed noise. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there with my papers trembling in my hands, my stomach tight with the kind of humiliation that makes your skin feel too small. I'm not being dramatic, I said, and my voice cracked on the last word. My dad's eyebrows lifted like he was amused by even that. Layla, he said, still chuckling, listen to yourself. My mum sighed, the long-suffering sigh she uses when she thinks she's being the adult. Sit down, she said again firmer. You're embarrassing your father. My hands were shaking so badly the pages fluttered, like a little white flag. I stared at my dad, at the crease between his eyebrows, at his spoon tapping against the bowl, and something in me snapped cleanly, not into anger, but into clarity. I gathered my papers into a neat stack, slid them into my tote, and said, very quietly, you can keep laughing. Then I walked out the back door into the cold night air so fast I didn't even grab my jacket, and the slam of the screen door behind me sounded like punctuation. It was a Friday in late 2018 when that happened, and I'd been building toward that moment for years without realizing it. I'm the oldest daughter in a family where being the oldest daughter means you're an extra parent, an extra translator, an extra pair of hands that exists to make other people's lives smoother. My parents immigrated when I was little, which meant there was always this invisible scoreboard in our house. Stability was winning, risk was stupid, and anything creative was something you did after you'd earned the right to breathe. My dad, Samir, ran a small convenience store for a decade until it nearly broke him. My mum, Hala, cleaned houses and learned English from daytime TV. They love us. They also love control because control is how they survived. My brothers could be dreams on legs, and it was called ambition. If I said the word dream out loud, it was treated like I'd said the word disaster. I did the right things. I studied commerce because it sounded safe. I got a graduate job at a mid-sized accounting firm because it came with a salary and my parents could tell relatives, she works in finance. I wore blazers that never fit my shoulders properly and learned how to smile through meetings where my brain felt like it was slowly shrinking. Meanwhile, at night, I'd stay up designing logos for friends' side hustles, making mood boards, learning software tutorials, following branding forums like other people follow sports. The first time someone paid me $200 for a logo, I felt a thrill so sharp it made my hands shake. Not because of the money, but because it was proof that the thing I loved wasn't imaginary. I didn't wake up one day and decide to become a boss. It was gradual. A friend's friend asked for a website. Then another. Then someone from my firm asked if I could help her partner's cafe rebrand. I started getting referrals. I built a little portfolio. I did it quietly because my parents had trained me to believe I needed permission to want things. When I finally hit a point where my side income matched my salary, I printed those documents and took them to my parents' kitchen like a student presenting a project. I thought if I showed them numbers, they'd respect it. I thought logic would protect me. I forgot that the disrespect was never about logic. It was about fear. And fear in my parents' house, always dressed up as mockery. After that night, I didn't speak to them for a week. Not as a punishment. More like I couldn't force my mouth into the shapes they expected. I went to work, sat under fluorescent lights, and felt that laugh replay in my body at random moments, on the train, in the bathroom stall, in the break room while stirring instant coffee. My dad's "people pay you to pick fonts" became this nasty little soundtrack that tried to convince me I was ridiculous. So I did the only thing that ever quieted it. I worked. I handed in my resignation a month later. My manager asked if I'd found another role. I said, "I'm starting my own studio." She blinked, then surprised me by smiling. "Good," she said, like she'd been waiting for me to say it. My hand still shook when I left that office with my cardboard box of desk junk, but it was a different kind of shaking now. Fear mixed with relief. The first year was not glamorous. It was me in a rented room with a wobbly desk, eating noodles, sending invoices, chasing late payments, and learning that being your own boss mostly means being your own admin department. I had clients who loved my work and clients who treated me like I was a vending machine. I had days where I stared at my bank balance and felt sick. I also had days where I finished a project and sat back in my chair and smiled so hard my cheeks hurt because it felt like my brain could finally breathe. I didn't tell my parents details. When my mom called, she'd say, "How's your little design?" Like it was a craft project. When my dad asked, it was always with that same skeptical tone. "Are you making real money?" If I said yes, he'd say, "Enough to pay rent." If I said yes, he'd say, "For now." My brothers took cues from them. My youngest, Amir, would joke, "So, when are you getting a real job again?" My middle brother, Omar, would just smirk. Then something happened that changed everything. A client I worked with, a woman named Priya, who ran a small skincare brand out of her garage, got a deal with a national retailer after our rebrand and packaging overhaul. She posted about it, tagged me, and suddenly my inbox wasn't quiet anymore. A bigger brand reached out. Then a bigger one, a marketing agency, wanted to partner. I hired a freelancer. Then another. I started raising my rates, sweating every time I hit send on a quote because I still carried my parents' laugh in my bones. But people paid. They didn't just pay, they thanked me. They introduced me to other people. They treated what I did like it mattered. 2 years in, I signed a contract with a fast-growing food company to lead a full brand refresh across packaging, digital, and retail rollout. It was the kind of contract my old accounting firm would have framed in a boardroom. I signed it at my wobbly desk and then went to the bathroom and threw up from adrenaline. I started making real money. Not lottery money. Not influencer fantasy money. But enough that I didn't have to calculate groceries in my head. Enough that I could pay a designer a fair rate. Enough that I could buy my mom a new washing machine when hers died, without flinching. I tried, at first, to help quietly because I still wanted their approval. I'd drop off groceries. I'd pay a bill. I'd do it like a secret, hoping they'd notice without me forcing them to. They didn't. They just started getting comfortable. My mom would call and say, "Since you're home anyway, can you pick up your brothers?" My dad would ask me to help with store paperwork. When relatives asked what I did, my parents would say, "She does some graphic stuff," and then immediately pivot to Omar's job, Omar's plans, Omar's future. I'd sit there smiling while my work, my life, was shrunk into a footnote. Then last year my dad came to me with a problem. Their store lease was ending. The landlord wanted to increase rent by a ridiculous amount. My parents were panicking. "We might have to close," my mom whispered on the phone, voice small in a way that still hits me like a punch. "Your father is so stressed."
I drove over.
I saw my dad's hands shaking slightly as he held the lease document. I saw the tired slump in his shoulders. And despite everything, I loved them. I still do. That's the maddening part. "I can help," I said. My dad looked up quickly. "You can?" "Yes," I said. "I can." He exhaled, relief washing over his face, so fast it almost made me angry. Not because he needed help, but because he accepted it so easily after years of treating me like a joke. "Okay," he said. "Good. We'll borrow some money and—"
No, I interrupte gently.
"Not borrow." He frowned. "What do you mean?" I told him calmly. "I'm going to buy the building." My mum gasped. My dad stared like he couldn't process it. "Buy the building?" he repeated. "Yes," I said. "The landlord is selling." I checked. "I can make an offer." My dad's face tightened. Pride and shock wrestled across it. "No," he said immediately, like the word was reflex. "No, we don't need your charity." "It's not charity," I said. "It's an investment. You'll lease it from me at a fair rate. You'll have stability."
No landlord surprises.
My mum's eyes filled with tears. "Layla," she whispered, like my name had weight suddenly. My dad pushed the papers away from him like they were burning. "Where would you even get that money?" he demanded, and there it was, the doubt dressed as outrage. I stared at him for a long second, then reached into my bag and slid a folder across the table. Not dramatic, not angry, just factual. The folder contained my last year's financial statements and the letter from my bank approving financing. I'd brought it because I knew he'd ask. He opened it. His eyes moved over the numbers. I watched his face change. First disbelief, then something like fear, then something close to shame. My mum's mouth trembled. This is real?" she asked. I nodded once. "It's real." My dad swallowed, hard. Then he did something that made my chest ache. He laughed. Not the barking laugh from the kitchen years ago. A small, broken laugh that sounded like it came from somewhere painful. "So, people really did pay you for fonts," he said, trying to make it a joke, but his eyes were wet.
I didn't laugh.
I just said, "They pay me for what I do." The thing you laughed at. And right there, in my parents' cramped store office with the smell of stale coffee and cardboard, I felt the moment I'd been building toward, the moment where they couldn't pretend anymore. That's where I'm going to pause the story midway like you asked, because this is the hinge point where I had to decide if I wanted to help them quietly again, or if I was finally going to make sure they actually saw me. My parents aren't villains twirling mustaches. They're complicated, scared people who survived by worshipping stability, and they tried to pass that survival strategy down like it was love. But fear doesn't excuse humiliation. My dad's laughter that night in the kitchen wasn't just a reaction, it was a message. Stay small so we feel safe. My mum's soft, cute hobby wasn't kindness. It was containment. And my brothers learned quickly that mocking me was a way to bond with my parents, like punching down was the family language. The frustrating thing is that my parents absolutely love me in the way they know how. They worry. They call. They show up with food. But they also treat my autonomy like a threat, and they treat my success like an accident that needs to be minimized so it doesn't disrupt the hierarchy. Watching my dad stare at my financial statements was satisfying in a way I didn't expect, not because I wanted to hurt him, but because I wanted the truth to finally land. I'm also aware that I'm playing with fire by mixing money and family. I can already feel the guilt hooks trying to set into my skin. After all we did, family helps family, don't be proud. But the truth is, I've been helping for years in ways they never named as help. I've been carrying emotional labor, translation, smoothing conflicts, being the sensible one. If I'm going to step in financially, I'm doing it with my eyes open, and I'm doing it in a way that makes it impossible for them to keep rewriting my life as a joke. Update. Okay, so a lot happened after the "I'm buying the building" conversation, and honestly, I didn't expect the fallout to be what it was. I thought the hard part would be money. It wasn't. The hard part was ego. I made an offer on the building the next week. The landlord accepted. It was scary. Signing paperwork that big makes your body feel like it's floating, but I had the numbers, I had a broker, I had a lawyer, and I had the kind of steady income my parents still refused to fully imagine. The purchase process took about 8 weeks, and in that time my family managed to turn it into a whole drama series. First, my dad refused to speak about it directly. He talked to my lawyer like my lawyer was the real person, and I was just a kid playing dress up. If I asked a question, he'd answer through my mom. If I said, "Dad, I need you to send me the store financials," he'd say, "Your mother will handle it." My mom would call me and whisper, "Don't get angry. He's just stressed." Translation: please don't force him to face the fact that you're the one saving him. Then my brothers got involved. Omar, who has always been my parents' pride because he went into a respectable field, called me and said, "So you're really doing this?" His tone wasn't admiration. It was suspicion, like I had hidden motives. "Yes," I said. He paused. "What's the catch?" he asked. I laughed once, sharp. "The catch is you don't get to disrespect me and then benefit from me without acknowledging it," I said.
He didn't like that.
He said, "So you're making it about you." I replied, "It's literally my money and my risk. Of course it's about me." He hung up. Amir, the youngest, tried a different approach. Flattery. He started texting me, "Proud of you, and you're killing it," which would have meant more if he hadn't spent years joking about my little design. Then he asked, casually, if I could help him with a car deposit. "Just a small loan," he wrote. I said no. He sent a long message about how I'd changed. I didn't respond. My mom got caught in the middle, and I do feel for her, but she also contributed to the mess. She started telling relatives I was thinking of buying a place for the family. Not the truth. Not Layla is buying the building as an investment and offering us a stable lease. She framed it like a generous daughter making a family purchase, which immediately triggered extended family entitlement. Suddenly, I had aunties I hadn't spoken to in years messaging me, "So happy for you," followed by, "My son is looking for work," or, "We're struggling with rent." I called my mom and said, "Stop telling people." She got defensive. "I'm proud," she said. I said, "You're not proud. You're recruiting witnesses, so it looks like you raised a successful daughter on purpose." She started crying. I hated myself for saying it, but it was true. The worst part came a few days before settlement. My dad called me to meet at the store after closing. I arrived and found him sitting in the office with Omar beside him, like a tribunal. My dad's arms were crossed.
He didn't offer tea.
That's how I knew it wasn't a loving conversation. "We've been talking," my dad began, and my stomach tightened. Omar slid a paper across the desk. "We think it's better if the building goes in Dad's name," he said. I stared at the paper. It was a rough agreement they'd typed up. I would provide the funds, Dad would be the legal owner, and they'd pay me back over time. I looked at my dad. "You want me to pay," I said slowly, "and you want to own it." My dad's jaw clenched. "It's the family store," he said. "It should be in the family." "I am the family," I replied, voice low. Omar leaned forward. "It's not about that. It's just optics. People will talk if the daughter owns it." I felt heat rise into my face. "So you're worried about what people will say," I said, "but you weren't worried about laughing at me for wanting this life." My dad snapped. "We didn't laugh like you think." I opened my phone and showed him the screenshot I'd saved years ago. Not a text, but a note I'd written that night because I was afraid I'd gaslight myself into forgetting. Dad laughed. Mom called it cute. I left shaking. My dad stared at it like it was evidence from a trial. "I'm not putting it in your name," I said clearly. "I'm buying it. I'll lease it to you. Fair rate. Long term. You'll have stability." My dad's face went red. "So you want to be our landlord?" he spat, like it was disgusting. I want you not to be at the mercy of someone who can raise rent anytime, I said. And I want my investment protected. Omar scoffed. Investment. So you're profiting off your parents? That accusation made something in me go very still. I'm not profiting, I said. I'm preventing you from collapsing. And if you want to call that profit, then you don't get it. My dad stood up so fast his chair scraped.
Fine, he said.
Then don't do it. For a second, the old fear flickered. Little girl fear of losing family approval. Then I remembered the kitchen laugh. I remembered the years of being minimized. I remembered how easily they wanted to take ownership the moment my success became useful. I stood too. Okay, I said calmly. Then I won't. My mom called me 10 minutes later sobbing. He's just upset, she said. Please don't punish us. I sat on my couch, phone pressed to my ear, and felt the weight of the choice. I could cave and give them ownership and spend the rest of my life being treated like an ATM with feelings. Or I could hold the line and risk being the bad daughter in everyone's story. I said, Mom, I'm not punishing you. I'm protecting myself. Settlement went ahead. I bought the building in my company's holding entity. I drafted a lease. I offered my parents terms that were genuinely favorable, below market rent, fixed increases, maintenance responsibilities clearly divided. I emailed it to them and said, these are the terms. If you want stability, sign. If you don't, you're free to lease somewhere else. They didn't speak to me for a week. Then my dad signed.
No apology. No acknowledgement.
Just a signature and a short text. We'll move forward. It hurt more than I expected. Not because I needed gratitude, but because even then he couldn't say, you were right. Okay, now I'll continue and finish the story. The first rent payment hit my account the next month. It wasn't much because I set it low, but seeing it felt strange. Like proof that the dynamic had changed. My dad stopped calling me for help. Omar stopped texting entirely. Amir still tried occasionally to ask for money, and then sulked when I said no. 3 months later, my parents hosted a big family dinner. I wasn't invited at first. I found out because an aunt posted a photo of the table on social media with a caption, "Family is everything." The next day my mom called. Her voice was small. "We didn't invite you because it was awkward," she said. I let the silence stretch. Awkward for who? I asked. For your father, she admitted. He feels ashamed. The word landed heavy. I didn't feel triumph. I felt tired. I went over anyway, not for the dinner, but to talk. I found my dad in the store after closing, counting the till. The same hands that used to pat my head now trembled slightly as he sorted coins. I'm not here to fight, I said. He didn't look up. Then why are you here? Because I don't want money to be the only language we speak, I said. My throat tightened. I want you to respect me even when you don't understand me. He finally looked up. His eyes were bloodshot like he hadn't slept. For a long time he said nothing. Then he sighed and said, rough. I was scared. I blinked. Of what? He swallowed. That you would fail, he said. And I would have to watch you suffer. And everyone would say, he let his daughter ruin her life. His voice cracked on the last part, and suddenly he looked old, not powerful. So I laughed, he whispered. Because if I laughed, maybe you would stop wanting it. Something in my chest softened, painfully. I didn't stop, I said. I know, he replied, and there was a tiny flicker of pride there, buried under shame. You didn't. I sat down across from him on the hard plastic chair and said, I'm not asking for an apology that fixes the past. I'm asking you to stop minimizing me in the present. My dad stared at the coins in his hand. Then he nodded once, slow. Okay, he said. It wasn't a movie moment. He didn't cry. He didn't hug me. He didn't suddenly become emotionally fluent. But he said okay, and in my family, that was an earthquake. The next week, at a smaller dinner with just my parents, my mom introduced me to a neighbor as my daughter, Layla. She runs her own company. Not graphic stuff.
Not little design. Company.
I nearly dropped my fork. Later, driving home, I realized the part I'd been chasing wasn't the money or the building or even the moment my parents saw the numbers. It was the moment my name stopped being an afterthought. I built a fortune, yes, enough that I'll never have to beg for permission to exist. But the real win was building a backbone strong enough to carry my love for my family without letting them use it to bend me. My dad is the classic fear-driven control guy. He mistakes panic for wisdom and calls it being realistic. He laughed at my dream because laughter was cheaper than admitting he was terrified. The problem is, terror doesn't give you the right to humiliate your kid. He doesn't get a medal for signing a lease after trying to maneuver the building into his name like I was some silent benefactor. That move, you pay, I own, wasn't just pride. It was entitlement dressed up as tradition. My mom is gentler, but she's sneaky in her own way. She uses tears as emotional traffic cones, redirecting accountability away from the person causing harm and toward the person refusing to absorb it. She also loves the reputation boost of my success now that it's undeniable, which is honestly funny in a dark way. The same woman who called my dream cute suddenly wants to tell relatives her daughter is a businesswoman like she personally built my company with her bare hands. My brothers? Omar is the worst type because he's respectable and thinks that makes him righteous. He cares more about optics than truth, and the fact he suggested the building should go in Dad's name because people will talk tells me everything about his priorities. Amir is more straightforward. He just wants money, and when he doesn't get it, he throws a tantrum and calls it betrayal. The entertaining part of all this is that my family spent years treating my dream like a joke, but the moment the dream became a solution to their crisis, suddenly they wanted to be co-owners of a success they mocked. It's like watching someone spit on a meal and then ask for seconds when they get hungry. If anyone deserves consequences, it's not just my dad for laughing, it's the whole family system that rewards disrespect until it becomes useful. And if anyone deserves credit, it's me for not confusing generosity with surrender. I helped my parents, but I didn't hand them the steering wheel. I didn't let shame bully me into making myself invisible again. I didn't let love become a leash. If there's a moral here, it's this. Building a fortune is impressive, but building boundaries in a family that trained you to be small is the real flex.